On this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, myself and Justin Lowery will talk about AEW versus NXT as they have very special Wednesday night shows, as well as the latest from COVID-19 and its effect on the wrestling industry on this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. And welcome back once again. I am your host, Sean Meyers, coming to you on another Friday night edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. My co-host, Justin Lowery, back in the saddle. Justin, it's been a few weeks. You're a busy man. I always feel like we have to start the show with something topical relating to the world and as it evolves, how it's affecting professional wrestling, because it does seem like it changes each and every week. And I kind of want to get your take first and foremost on something that is more localized to us, you and I both in Western Pennsylvania. We have seen a drastic, change in the handling and the number of cases for COVID-19 since we last convened on this show. 3 or 4 weeks ago, things were doing very, very well here. Now there's a significant spike. It's led to some rules being changed. They would relax back to what would be a green status where you could pretty much kind of go back to normal. That's been changed quite a bit. And I know you're technically in Westmoreland County, so you're not affected by some of the Allegheny County stuff. But this is significant because Western Pennsylvania is sort of epitomizing what's going on in most cities across the U.S., where things progressed, I would say, through late May, early June. People relaxed kind of the rules that were in place. Cases are spiking. And this affects AEW and WWE. And I'll focus WWE in particular. They're now changing some of their protocol. They're saying the wrestlers that are in the stands have to be wearing face masks, covering, stuff like that. In your estimation, are they doing this just because the cases have spiked, or is there something that really is... Do they actually start caring now, more or less?
No, they don't care. They're doing it to cover their asses. You just gotta have good optics, you know.
Which I think at the very beginning they did, and then they kind of went away from it, right?
Well, I mean, did they ever really? I don't know. I mean, I had no problem with anything they were doing. I wasn't offended. I mean, you know, they got an audience that kept them 6 feet apart, and I mean, they're filming in Florida, which is now one of the hotbeds here in the country. You know, and I guess it was 2 weeks ago, last week, I wasn't on. They had a bunch of people test positive, and they got like a little, you know, they got blasted a little bit for it. So now they're going to make everyone wear a mask, just to, you know, save, like I said, optics. Just to play the part, look good. They don't want bad PR. It's all a PR move. It's straight.
I primarily agree, but they don't want to be without more top stars for any period of time.
Well, I mean, if someone catches it, okay, they're off the air for 2 weeks. I mean, it's not that big a deal in the scheme of things. What's 2 weeks? I mean, you already have. I think
when you look at the people who have been absent for months now, they can't afford to lose anyone else, right? I mean, Kevin Owens probably is not coming back anytime soon. We know Roman, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, seemingly as a result of an injury.
Yeah.
They are very shorthanded as it is. If you were to say we have to take 15 superstars off of Raw and SmackDown for the next 2 weeks, I think that would be significant. And we don't even know all the people, but Randy Orton wasn't on Raw. That seems like that could be a pretty significant absence if he's a guy that maybe has to miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I think that is part of it too, is they don't want anyone having to miss television because they test positive.
I mean, you can work around that. I mean, they can cut a promo at their house, and then it can be edited in the studio where they're on. I mean, we saw Edge, you know, was it last week, cut a promo, you know, at his house, and they, you know, threw it on the air. They can show old matches. They're doing that, you know. There's stuff around it here and there that you could easily get past it. I mean, I don't think Vince is all that concerned. I don't think the people that are in charge are all that concerned.
How about AEW?
AEW seems to be doing a whole lot better with it. They don't have the positive test, it seems like they've been handling it better from the get-go, because they've been testing people way before WWE was. They were just
Legitimately testing, not just
Yes.
taking a temperature.
Right, where Vince and company were just taking temperatures up until like 2 weeks ago when all this happened. John Moxley hasn't been on AEW because, as we know, Renee Young tested positive. He has tested negative, but just to play it safe, he quarantined himself for 2 weeks just in case. He did have it. Smart move.
I don't. Again, there's so much information. This is an evolving pandemic that it seems like some of the information changes. But how does he test negative if he's been living with her the whole time?
He just didn't he didn't contract it. It's possible. You could come in contact with somebody who has it and not catch it. I don't know how that works. I'm not a doctor.
Right. That's what I'm wondering too. Because it seems like there's so many asymptomatic people that you figure he would at least be that level of it.
Right. But this is a wrestling show, so we're going to keep it wrestling and try to keep the politics and the news and stuff out of it. But I don't know. They keep telling you how contagious this is, so it is dumbfounding to me a little bit that somebody who lives in the same house as that person not only lives with them, but that's the husband. I'm sure they've kissed. Right. They sleep in the same bed. You would think you would catch it, but maybe luckily for him, he didn't. I would assume if he was positive, they would come out and say it.
That's another thing, because WWE, and it seems like a lot of times when you hear speculation, it probably is true. Apparently, WWE doesn't really want the people who test positive to let it be known.
Yes.
And we know that the people who said stuff were not active wrestlers. It was Renee Young, it was Kayla Braxton, I think Jamie Noble, who works sort of, in a backstage role. And I'm forgetting someone else, but it wasn't their wrestlers who came out and said this. And the rumor was that Renee maybe got a little bit of heat even putting it out there that she had it. I think there are a lot of wrestlers who have it. They know that they've tested positive, but they don't want them to say that. And that might be the case with AEW as well. It very well could be.
It could be, but it seems though AEW is more transparent with stuff. They're very open, and that's something they choose to be different from WWE about. Vince and company likes to keep things close to the vest. If somebody, it's your own choice. If you want to come up publicly that you've had it, maybe to bring awareness or want to tell your story.
Which is what a ton of professional athletes did at the beginning.
Right. And most of the time they tell you when they're recovered. They don't tell you when they're actively sick or whatever. They tell you about their experiences. Everybody has a different experience with this. Some people don't feel a thing. Some people feel like they just have a cold.
Right.
Other people end up in the hospital. It's, to each their own, but geez, I don't think WWE's handled very well at all. They really, go back to your question.
Well, here's what I kept thinking about the last couple of days, Justin. I remember, and I think it was the last time you were on. If not, it was one of the more recent times that we've had you. You said WWE, and really all of wrestling, they can't kind of dip their toe in the pool. Either, go all in or go all out. And by continuing to run these shows, they sort of said, okay, we're just going to find a way to work through this. But I'm starting to think what they did at the very beginning would have worked a lot better than what they've progressed to now. Remember, they had no audience, okay? And to me, we think we both agree, the audience hasn't made a massive difference.
No, I don't know. I enjoy AEW's audience participation better because
you said it's sort of predicated on storylines and stuff. They
interact.
And they're known people. These are sort of like anonymous faces for the most part with the WWE fan.
Yeah, fans, and it comes off it really does come off like they're doing what they're told to do. It's fake, the chants. There's something just staged about it.
So why continue to do it? Aren't they better off? We already know they're piping in crowd sound. We know that they did that tonight. They obviously did it in the Edge and Orton match. If they're going to do that, don't risk another 20 plus people being in there that don't need to be there. Why do they need 3 announcers live at the table on Monday Night Raw? Remember the first episode of SmackDown, Cole was by himself for most of the time. NXT, they have Morrow and Beth remotely. Why do they need 3 announcers sitting at the same table? Why do they need... I think they could go back to minimizing, and you said showing old matches. Do you remember the first Raw and SmackDown? There was maybe 3 matches total. Yeah. And they did other things to kind of fill the time. I think they would have been a lot better served to do that. And I'll kind of give this a next step. If you're having the people in the audience have masks, you could probably have announcers and referees have masks. I understand the wrestlers, it's not going to work because it'll come off. But I think that you could really, if they wanted to step things up, they could have made some pretty drastic changes. It doesn't seem like they really did that. And they still had Ric Flair on this past week, which is insane.
Hey, people make their own choices. If Rick wants to do it, be my guest. But if
you're Vince McMahon, why do you put your company at risk of having him? Think of if he gets really sick from it. That's a major liability for WWE to have him there.
You know what? There's a good chance he signed a waiver. Vince ain't stupid.
Right, but even then, you said it's about the optics and the PR. No one's going to say, well, he signed a waiver. They're going to say, why was a 70-some-year-old guy there?
I see. Look, if they're all being tested now weekly, then honestly, if they're tested, it's like sports. If you're tested and everyone there knows you're negative, you're okay.
But we were told they were testing all along, basically. You know what I mean?
You got to believe. Now you got to believe. It's like the wellness policy. They say they drug test people, but there's never. We know it's loosely based. I would assume now they're legitly testing since 2 weeks ago. Look, I mean, their audience doesn't mean anything to me. He's going to keep it because AEW had it. It went over big. And he's
which I think is a mistake to try to, okay, they did it, it worked for them, we need to do it now. But in the process, it really, I mean, again, if you're honestly trying to say we're about safety or whatever, you don't need those people. I understand, okay, we have to still do a weekly show. You don't need those people there. You don't need 3 commentators at a table. You still need the wrestlers, but maybe fewer of them. Maybe have 15 to 20 that come and do a couple of tapings, and that's it. You don't need extras and guys that are surrounding the ringside and lumberjack matches and stuff like that, right? There is ways that they can make this safer without completely stopping live weekly programming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say if you want to, yes. I mean, but if they legitimately are testing everybody and they all come back negative, then I think it is fine and safe to have 3 people in a commentator's booth. If you all know they're negative, then we're all square. Everybody has their choice. I mean, those guys don't have to be there. I mean, I don't know if they're getting paid if they say I'm not coming, if their paychecks stop, if they feel like they have to. But, I mean, it is their job. People still have to work. If they are being tested, and, I mean, I don't see a problem with it. I mean, that's what sports is facing as they're coming back now.
Well, and the scary thing is it looks like all the plans for sports could very easily go awry before they start up. And I think you and I would both agree that it's almost guaranteed that it's not going to be smooth sailing for any of these sports throughout the season. Maybe they'll make it through, but there's going to be some bumps along the way, no doubt.
Absolutely. If you think whatever major force sport you want to talk about is going to go through clean, that's just naive. I mean, somebody's going to test positive. Absolutely.
And I think the NHL and NBA have already had like a couple of dozen players.
But that's actually good. They're testing positive before they're in their bubbles, okay?
Well, I would say it in theory, but remember, if you go to Kayla Braxton, who came out and said it, she said, I got it again. She's contracted it twice since March.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you test positive, but now you're quarantined. You're in your bubble, right?
Right.
So you should be technically, once you're in a bubble, you're with all negative people. So you shouldn't have the virus in your housing plan, the arena. I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Right, I get that part.
And quite honestly, the NHL, the hub cities are in Canada, which is in much better shape than here in America. So actually, I think the NHL has a pretty damn good shot of maybe being the smoothest. I saw the MLB numbers today, and they came back pretty good for testing everyone as they came back into training camp, so that's a good sign.
Baseball's a sport that you can sort of just naturally distance, and I'll say this, Justin. I know that you're involved in baseball. Yes. I played both hockey and tennis with a mask on. Baseball, absolutely, you can play with a mask on. There's no doubt. I don't think you could wrestle with it on. I don't think you could play basketball or football or hockey with it on successfully, but I think baseball, you could wear a mask if they really needed to throughout the game.
We started our season, like 3 weeks ago. I was at a baseball tournament this past weekend. Nobody had masks on.
And since then, there's been a mandate that everyone is supposed to wear them when they leave their houses in this state. And I don't know where Florida stands, because again, Florida's been loose with their regulations. But I believe Pennsylvania is far from alone in that regard. I think that there's probably
there's other
double-figure states who have said, leave your house, you should wear a mask legally.
My aunt and uncle live in Houston, and she just texted me today. They have the mask mandate, but they're going a step farther. If they see you out without one, you can get a $250 fine.
Right.
So they're actually fining people down in Texas now if you don't have one on.
Right. Here like I said, I played tennis and hockey with it on. It wasn't easy, but it's something that if you really believe, like, okay, if we want to continue having Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite, we need to do this, I think you can find a way to make that work. Because what if Florida mandates that? How do these companies get out of that?
Pennsylvania mandated it, but the Phillies and Pirates, who are holding their training camps right now in the state, don't have to wear them.
Is that true?
Yes. 100%.
Just when they're on the field, or how does that work?
No, they don't have to wear them because they've all been tested, and they know who's negative, so they do not have to follow that guideline.
Okay. I guess that aspect of it sort of makes sense to me.
There's logic there. Like I said, if you're tested, there's absolute logic. And they came out today talking about youth and high school sports. When they're actively doing workouts, they do not have to have a mask on. They said, though, if a football team, if you're on the sidelines, then you put on the mask. Baseball, if you're in the dugout, you put on the mask.
Yeah, that seems kind of faulty to me. Like, if you're coming in off the field without one, where you're going to sit down, then put it on, at that point, it's probably already a moot point.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. That's why a lot of people say these rules, these stipulations are very subjective, and it's just like throwing something on the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
That's why a lot of people...
I will say, I've heard all along that outdoor activities, the rate is much, much, much lower of transmission as opposed to indoor.
You're out in the open.
And that's another issue for wrestling, is they're in these arenas.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's fairly enclosed. It's nowhere similar to like a stadium where it's massively open. The Performance Center or AEW work out of, for the most part, they're smaller venues.
Baseball should be okay. It's too early to tell with football because, they're actually like hitting, tackling each other. But you are in an open stadium. That should help. Basketball and hockey, they're the ones that are enclosed. We'll see. We'll see, what happens. Nobody really knows.
It'll certainly be interesting to see in terms of what the major wrestling companies do if this continues to evolve. Will we see maybe a little bit less in-ring wrestling? We'll find out. But we know Wednesday night has continued to be a competition. And you mentioned that WWE a lot of times does something because AEW does it, and they do a response. I think we saw that Wednesday night. Fyter Fest for AEW, the first of 2 weeks. The first of 2 weeks of the Great American Bash for NXT. Ratings were up. They were better than what they were maybe a month ago. They weren't astronomical, but NXT won its second straight week. I've tried to figure out what really determines who wins. I can't figure out a reason. Can you?
Well, no. And then you see, again, the second week in a row, NXT won in total viewership. But again, AEW has won in the demo.
Which is Chris Jericho's point.
He
made a point of saying that too. I think Sasha Banks maybe.
That demo is what the advertisers look at, and that's how you get your advertising money.
And again, I sort of understand that, but I feel like you want the most viewers possible. And if you have an older audience, then there's plenty of advertisers who want an older audience, right?
But see, well, yeah, but wrestling's not portrayed to an older audience. If you watch daytime soap operas, if you notice the commercials that are on during them, they're pretty much for middle-aged women. No offense to middle-aged women out there, but you'll see cleaning products and this and that. Like, it's actually pretty funny. If I have a day off of work and I just have the TV on, it's
You're
like
watching Young and the Restless.
Right. You know, the commercials are different. Price is Right, game shows. Now, if you watch certain TV shows, you know, the commercials. I mean, a lot of people going back to sports, MLB, their ratings and their demos are very low with younger audiences.
Right.
The people that watch Major League Baseball seem to be 55 and over. That's actually bad because you need the young people to start watching carry it on.
But what I'm saying is then if you know that the demo is older, don't you just have some of those same advertisers that play off of, to your point, what you would see on like a Tuesday afternoon with those type of things?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe we could see some Ben Gay commercials for WWE
programming. They have Ric Flair out there, Justin. I mean,
woo! Yeah, you know, I mean, it's funny to me. I know the demos matter even for TV shows. Like if you Google TV show ratings, they'll give you the total audience member, and then the demo. And now too, I would be interested in a couple of days people showing us DVR numbers. You know, how many people? Okay, this week we watched NXT live, but we DVR'd AEW, or next week we're going to do it vice versa.
Now, how do you typically approach it?
I flip back and forth.
Okay, but you don't DVR either?
No. I honestly, I don't really have the time to go back and watch it. And I never liked DVRing wrestling shows. I just tend to screw this, I'll just fast forward this. And I do watch more AEW. On Wednesday, the only NXT match that really had my interest would have been Banks and Io Shirai. I wanted to watch it and I missed it because of my kid, but that was really the match I wanted to watch on NXT.
And that was the main event. What did AEW have with its main event?
Sorry,
you're good. You deserved it.
A little Code Red Diet Mountain Dew. Who was it? It was the tag team titles, I believe. See, it all kind of runs in together with me because I was taking care of my kid. And I kind of missed the last half an hour of both shows.
Do you think the promotion for the shows, the matches that are advertised, that has a massive difference? Because I've seen some NXT shows that were so heavily promoted that they almost felt like pay-per-views, and I've seen other shows that didn't have a great set of matches, and they do better in the ratings than the ones that were hyped up. I
have no idea why it seems week to week it changes drastically.
Right.
I can't
I understand. Sometimes both shows are lower because there was another big attraction on Wednesday. Maybe there wasn't that much competition this week, so both shows went up. But why does NXT flip and kind of take the lead?
I buy the competition, but right now, what competition is there? There's nothing on television. I mean, there's live soccer, but that's over by 4:30. So at nighttime, there's really nothing to watch except reality shows and old movies. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Do you buy into either one of these, Fyter Fest or the Great American Bash, being anything different than just a regular weekly show? Because I saw almost no difference other than the set for the Great American Bash. And Bayley having some incredible patriotic outfit that was her and Sasha, and I've said this, I think I tweeted this, Justin. I think the women of WWE have absolutely stolen the show during the pandemic.
I 100% agree with you. 100%. And even the people you called out by name, Sasha, Bayley, the Iconics, I'm interested in them. Those girls are fun. The Iconics are so entertaining. Those four alone have been more entertaining than anybody else on the WWE
I
roster.
think, at least for a while, Zelina Vega was up there. She was
Oh,
killing
yeah.
it. Now she's
Yeah.
not wrestling. But you mentioned before, Asuka, to me, has...
Yeah. Asuka's has been entertaining. I mean, the women have, I think, really shined. The men, not so much.
What about the Big Show, though?
You know what? Oh man,
Do you think
no.
do you think he has fun with it, though?
Yeah, I do. Well, did you see his one tweet? I think he knows. I mean, hell, I did sit through his Netflix show just to watch, and I have to admit, like the last 3 shows, I just skipped. But if you're looking for family fun with the kids, you give that show a try. The Big Show, he is what he is, man. They bring back these old guys because Vince doesn't know what the hell to do, and I mean, the Big Show, for crying out loud.
Well, I talked to Sean Benjamin, and it really seemed like the 2 most notable differences: Paul Heyman no longer in control, Bruce Pritchard taking over, was they immediately brought back the Big Show, and they threw Dolph Ziggler into a feud with Drew McIntyre. And maybe those things would have happened. Again, they are hurting for talent, but it seems like a little bit of channeling guys that are more established, and maybe, easing off a little bit of some of the less proven guys, or maybe some of the guys that they thought weren't connecting. Is that kind of what you anticipate with Bruce Pritchard going forward?
Oh yeah, they're using anybody that they can get that has any name recognition, they will use. Here's the thing: we know what we said, connecting. Nobody knows who's connecting because there's no audience.
Well, they do get breakdowns for ratings, and I wonder if that there's so many things about wrestling that are interesting, because I think we've gone back and forth on this. I won't, go into too much detail, but the style of wrestling now, like you could say, like in ring wise, it's so much ahead of what it was before, but it's not translating to ratings, right?
Well, right, yeah, and I think that we've had the kind of like this convo where, like, right now wrestling's just not cool.
Right.
It could be great in the ring, but people aren't going like, dude, did you catch Monday Night Raw last night? Oh yeah, like nobody really cares about wrestling right now.
If you see a guy that has a great match, you would think like, okay, that works. But if you look at the ratings for that quarter hour and it's not great, that means that people probably didn't even care about if it was a good match or not.
Well, and this is where people hate on Vince about, but Vince is right. And, it goes against pretty much what I like. I can appreciate a great wrestling match, but the majority of the people don't care about a great wrestling match. They care about a great story and a great character.
And what's getting more interaction on social media? A John Cena match or an Aleister Black match?
Right. That's the thing. Like, Hulk Hogan, he wasn't a very good wrestler, but yet people tuned in. People like storylines. The Austin McMahon storyline, that people love that storyline.
And that was with a wrestler who was past his prime because of injuries, and one who never was even a wrestler.
Right. So it's honestly, I mean, I hate to say it, it has nothing to do with how good of a wrestler you are. It's writing and character charisma. You do have to have the it factor. Austin, even though he wasn't as good as he was maybe in WCW, he still had it, it, like The Rock. I mean, my God, you saw from the very beginning there was something special about him. These guys like Chad Gable can go out there, put on a hell of a match, but he's very bland. Like, let's be honest.
And I agree with that, but I think one of the issues is if you would have looked at, let's say, Elias in NXT, you would have said the same thing. Like, why would I care about him? And then they kind of let him go out there and just say, hey, cut a promo ripping this town or whatever, and it gets a massive reaction and it works. So, like, a lot of these guys, I think they don't have the opportunity, really. And sometimes, like, we've only seen Apollo Crews as one type of character, right? The good guy who comes out and he's happy. Do you remember when Bayley was a really boring face?
Yes.
Okay, what is she now? Probably one of the most entertaining heels amongst all women in wrestling.
They let her, right. I mean, but you have to...
Sometimes it's not the person who doesn't have it. It's the character that they're stuck in.
I agree. And again, we've talked about this, and I rip Vince McMahon. He talks about the brass ring and grabbing an opportunity. A lot of the times you pigeonhole these wrestlers. Let them do a promo on their own. Here's your bullet points. Hit these. Go. Sink or swim. Instead of scripting everything word for word, because it doesn't feel real. Like, that's the problem with WWE today. It's too micromanaged. It's too micromanaged, and Vince is honestly just out of touch.
I think I know the answer to this, but we're talking about WWE and needing to build a, Steve Austin or The Rock and how that hasn't happened. When you look at AEW, do you see someone there that could transcend just being a wrestler and become a person that everyone recognizes, even if they're not a wrestling fan? Because I don't think we're counting Chris Jericho.
No.
That's been established.
Yeah. He's established, but yeah, I want to say Sammy, even though he's suspended right now. He has something special, and he's only like, I think, 26, and that's why Jericho brought him in the inner circle. He sees something, he wants to kind of mentor him. There's something special with him there. There really is.
The analogy I hear for him and Angel Garza, because it's very easy just to make lazy analogies, is Eddie Guerrero. And I would say while Eddie was obviously a great and a Hall of Famer, he wasn't the type that you say, okay, that changes a company. And that's more along the lines of, would a guy like Sammy Guevara change AEW?
He's younger. I think I would like to see him in another 5 years. I really think there's something special with him. And Adam Page.
That was the person I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring up those two, and I know it can be a little sensitive with Sammy right now, but there's before I really started watching him a couple of years ago, Ring of Honor, he was all right. Like, I thought he was kind of bland, nothing special, but he's really grown into a character, and he's definitely a future AEW champion without a shadow of a doubt. I think they are grooming him to be one of the top guys in that company.
I'm correct that he wrestled in the first championship match?
Yes, it was him and Jericho. And Jericho, won. So I do think he has an opportunity. I think those two right now have opportunity.
Anything else that you're going to keep your eye on over, I guess, at this point, the rest of the summer? Because it doesn't seem like we talked about SummerSlam maybe being the return to fans. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
I agree. I think at this point, the summer is going to be status quo. I'm looking at maybe we'll see what things are like in September, and before we judge, maybe look at fans.
I'll say this: if the NFL finds a way to get fans in the stadium, I would think that Vince McMahon's going to be pounding the door to try to get some people in.
Oh, but here's the thing.
Admittedly, we said it's a different situation. One's outdoor and a 60,000.
It's outdoors, and you could put 10,000 people in a 60,000 seat stadium and socially distance and wear a mask. So That's completely different than, okay, we're in a 250. Like, you can't do that in wrestling because that's going to look really, really bad if you put 10,000. Right, 50 people in a 500 seats. You can't do it. So wrestling, unfortunately, doesn't have that luxury. At this point, give me blow-up dolls, cardboard cutouts.
The little SpongeBob guy was in the Korean right? In the Korean baseball league, they had like little SpongeBobs and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Vince hasn't done something corny and stupid like that.
Maybe they could do like you have the Wrestling Buddy.
Yes. Put them in the stands.
Yeah, they could do like stand-ups of the 6 foot tall Miz in the crowd or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. I heard this or read this somewhere, and I forget what league or who was doing it, but people were like charging $10 for your picture, and they would put a cardboard cutout of you for $10, like in a seat. So
I dig it.
I mean, maybe you could go out to wrestling fans. Hey, give us $10. We'll take your picture, give you a cardboard cutout, and put you in the stands.
Nice.
Yes.
I was trying to sign off before, but real quick, because I think that you have great perspective on this, Justin. The Undertaker's retirement to me was a very bizarre one. But as I said with Sean Benjamin, there's not really a textbook way to retire in wrestling. Yes or no, will he wrestle again in WWE?
No, because I think this is finally legit because he did the documentary series. He said all this. I think he finally knows, like, this is it now.
When they were starting the documentary, even starting to air them, do you think that they knew kind of how it was going to end?
Yes, because I think he finally had it in his mind, like, this is it. I think he had his setup. Have you watched all 5 episodes?
No, I need to watch that.
Certainly. Have you watched any of them?
I have not.
Oh,
I know it started back, like 3 years ago, right? I mean, it goes pretty far back.
And I mean, you need to watch it. Great watch. Yeah, I think it is. And if you actually watch it, I think you could tell by the last episode and in his voice, like, yeah, I think he knows that he can't go anymore. Like, and he talks about it, like how in certain matches he knew it was crap. And that's actually what made him come back, because he couldn't let his last match be something like that.
If it ends with him and AJ Styles, is that a good way for him to go out?
I think that's the best way he can at this point. He can't, and he said it himself, he can't do what he used to do in the ring anymore. He can't. Like, he physically can't do it anymore. And I think he's okay with how it ended. You know, he got to have a, I guess, good match. You know, people were happy.
I think it was, universally acclaimed.
And in the documentary, he actually said that he felt that he was done anyway, but the opportunity to do something with AJ Styles is the only thing that got him to do that match. He wasn't going to do it with anybody else.
Which is interesting, because that was like the one name that people weren't really saying. You know what I mean? Like, that you never really heard that.
If in the documentary too, when they're interviewing other wrestlers, AJ Styles has a lot of respect in the industry with the boys. They all view him as one of the greats, and all would love to work with him. And I think Taker knew he would be in the ring, because at the time he thought it would be in the ring with somebody that could help him have a final great match.
Well, if it is indeed the end, certainly one of the more interesting conclusions to a wrestling career in professional wrestling history. We're going to say that this show is history. However, if you want to, you could follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. I was slacking a little bit this week. I'll get on my game next week, however, on Twitter. Also on Instagram, that way. I'm over there. It is 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give Justin Lowery a follow while you're at it. He's well over 1,000 followers, but if he wants to add to it, right there, JLowery133 on Twitter. And for my co-host Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off. We'll catch you again next week. It'll be here. It'll be on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.